Ambassador Zethkar adjusted his ceremonial robes as his ship dropped out of hyperspace near the small blue planet. The mission was routine. He had done this hundreds of times before. Find a new species, test their aggression levels, install compliance chips in their leaders, and add another client race to the Galactic Council's vast empire. The planet called Earth looked peaceful enough. Swirling white clouds covered green and brown continents. A single moon orbited nearby. Zethkar's sensors showed the inhabitants had barely mastered radio waves. They were still burning fossil fuels and fighting small wars with chemical explosives. Primitive, just like all the others. Begin standard approach protocol, Zethkar told his ship's computer. The vessel engaged its cloaking field and moved toward the planet. No species had ever detected a council ship during first contact. Their technology was simply too advanced. That's when everything went wrong. A crackling transmission filled the bridge. Static mixed with voices speaking in multiple languages. Zethkar's translator worked frantically to keep up. Unknown vessel, this is Earth Space Monitoring Station Alpha. We see you out there. Please respond on frequency 7.23 gigahertz. We come in peace. Zethkar stared at his instruments in shock. The cloaking field was working perfectly. Their ship was invisible to any sensors these primitives should possess. Yet somehow they knew he was there. More transmissions flooded in. The humans were broadcasting in 17 different languages. Some Zethkar recognized as Earth languages. Others made his blood run cold. 3 of them were ancient Velthari dialects that had been dead for centuries. How could these creatures possibly know them? Computer, run full diagnostic on cloaking systems, Zethkar ordered. All systems functioning normally, came the reply. Cloaking field at maximum efficiency. Yet the transmissions kept coming. The humans weren't just guessing. They were tracking his ship's exact position. They even seemed to know his approximate size and mass. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the control room of the newly built First Contact Center in Colorado. 6 months ago, the world's governments had quietly established the facility after detecting unusual energy signatures from deep space. They had been waiting for this moment. Signal strength is increasing, reported her assistant, Dr. James Park. Whatever it is, it's definitely artificial and it's getting closer. Sarah had spent years studying the strange radio patterns they'd been picking up from various points in the galaxy. The signals were too organized to be natural phenomena. Someone was out there, and now they were coming to Earth. Send the greeting message again, Sarah instructed. All frequencies, all languages. The linguistics team had worked for months preparing the transmission. Earth's major languages were obvious choices. But the breakthrough had come when Dr. Elena Vasquez discovered that some of the space signals followed patterns similar to ancient Earth languages. If aliens had visited before, they might recognize the old dialects. Zethkar's confusion grew by the hour. The humans weren't just detecting his ship. They were actively trying to communicate. In his 1,000 years of service, no pre-contact species had ever done this. Most didn't even know space travel was possible. He reviewed the Council's files on Earth. The planet should be decades away from basic spaceflight. Their most advanced weapons were crude nuclear devices. Their computers were barely more sophisticated than counting machines, yet they had found him. Open a communication channel, Zethkar finally decided. The mission parameters were clear. If first contact protocols were compromised, he had authority to adapt. This is Ambassador Zethkar of the Velthari Empire, representing the Galactic Council, he broadcast. How did you detect our presence? The response came immediately. Hello, Ambassador. This is Dr. Sarah Chen speaking for Earth. We've been waiting for you. As for how we found you, well, your ship's gravitational field creates some pretty obvious distortions in local spacetime. Plus, you guys aren't as good at hiding electromagnetic emissions as you think. Zethkar felt his confidence crumble. Gravitational field detection required technology that most council members had only developed after centuries of spaceflight. These humans had figured it out before they'd even left their own planet. We would like to invite you to land, Dr. Chen continued. We've prepared a welcoming ceremony. Nothing fancy, just some food and music. We're very excited to meet you. Food and music? Zethkar checked his files again. Most species reacted to first contact with fear, worship, or aggression. No one had ever offered him a meal. I must inform you, Zethkar said carefully, that your species will need to undergo standard council evaluation procedures. This is for the safety and stability of the galaxy. Oh, the compliance testing? We figured that was coming. We've actually prepared some evaluation materials of our own. Fair's fair, right? If you're going to judge us, we'd like to know who we're dealing with too. Zethkar's head spun. Compliance testing was classified information. How could they possibly know about it? We'll transmit our cultural database in a few minutes, Dr. Chen added. Fair warning though, it's pretty big. About 400 terabytes. Hope your computers can handle it. 400 terabytes? Most species needed decades to compile that much cultural information. Earth had apparently done it before first contact even began. The transmission arrived as promised. Zethkar's ship groaned under the data load. The files contained everything: human history, art, science, philosophy, entertainment, and detailed analyses of the strange signals they'd been detecting from space. They had been studying galactic civilization for years, buried in the files. Zethkar found detailed technical specifications for Council ship designs, accurate descriptions of 17 different member species, and worst of all, critical analyses of Council policies with suggestions for improvement. How long have you known about us? Zethkar asked weakly. Officially, 6 months. Unofficially, we've been picking up your radio chatter for about 3 years. Your security protocols need work, by the way. We've included some encryption suggestions in the files. Zethkar stared at the wall of his cabin. In 3 days, these humans had shattered every assumption about first contact. They detected cloaked ships, spoke dead languages, and had been spying on the Council for years. Worse, they seemed genuinely excited about the whole situation. His emergency report to the Council would be interesting to write. On Earth, Sarah Chen smiled as she watched the alien ship finally begin its descent toward the landing site. Humanity's greatest adventure was about to begin. They had been preparing for this moment since the first strange signal reached Earth. Whatever happened next, it was going to be fun. The landing site buzzed with activity as hundreds of humans gathered to watch the alien ship touch down. Zethkar had expected fear or chaos. Instead, he saw excitement and curiosity. Children held handmade welcome signs. Scientists set up recording equipment. Someone had even organized a food truck. Dr. Sarah Chen waited at the designated meeting point, flanked by representatives from every major nation on Earth. Behind them stood teams of linguists, scientists, engineers, and diplomats. Everyone wanted to be part of humanity's first conversation with aliens. Zethkar's ship settled onto the prepared landing pad with barely a whisper. The sleek vessel was beautiful, its silver hull reflecting the morning sun. Then a section of the hull simply melted away, forming a perfect doorway. The ambassador emerged slowly, clearly nervous. He stood 7 feet tall with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His ornate robes marked him as someone important. Behind him came 2 assistants carrying what looked like ceremonial items. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Zethkar," Sarah said, stepping forward with a warm smile. "Thank you for coming. We're honored to meet you." Zethkar stopped walking. In all his years of first contact missions, no one had ever thanked him for arriving. Most species either ran away or fell to their knees in worship. These humans acted like he was a guest they'd been expecting. "Dr. Chen," he replied carefully, "I must begin the standard Council evaluation process. Your species must be tested for aggressive tendencies and technological compliance." "Of course," Sarah nodded. "We've prepared presentation materials for that. But first, would you like some coffee? You've had a long journey." "Coffee?" Zethkar consulted his translator. The word meant a heated beverage made from plant seeds. Why would they offer him plant water? "I do not require sustenance," he said formally. "Fair enough. How about we start with the technical exchange then? We've been studying your ship's design while you landed. Fascinating use of gravitic fields for propulsion. We think we know how to improve the efficiency by about 30%. Zethkar nearly dropped his ceremonial staff. "You analyzed our propulsion system?" "While we were landing." Dr. James Park stepped forward, tablet in hand. "The energy patterns were pretty clear once we understood what to look for. Your current configuration creates some unnecessary turbulence in subspace. We've run some simulations that show how to smooth out the field dynamics." "That is impossible," Zethkar sputtered. "Our technology is thousands of years ahead of yours." "Maybe," Sarah shrugged. "But sometimes a fresh perspective helps. We've had similar breakthroughs before. Want to see our preliminary designs for faster-than-light communication?" She gestured to a nearby display showing technical diagrams that made Zethkar's head spin. The math was crude but somehow correct. These primitives had independently discovered principles that had taken the Council centuries to develop. "How did you create this?" he asked weakly. "Our quantum physics team has been working on it for months," explained Dr. Vasquez. "We figured if you guys could travel between stars, you probably had some kind of instant communication system, so we started from that assumption and worked backward." Zethkar's mind reeled. Working backward from assumptions? That wasn't how science was supposed to work. You gathered data first, then formed theories. Yet somehow it had worked. "We should begin the formal evaluation," he said, trying to regain control of the situation. "Absolutely," Sarah agreed. "We've prepared comprehensive files on human civilization. History, culture, technology, social structures, everything you need. We've also included some questions about the Galactic Council. We're very interested in how your government works." "Questions? About the Council?" No one questioned the Council. They were the supreme authority in the galaxy. "What kind of questions?" Zethkar asked suspiciously. Dr. Chen smiled and pulled out a thick folder. "Well, for starters, how do you handle resource distribution across 847 different worlds? Your current system seems pretty inefficient. We've got some ideas about optimization algorithms that might help." "You want to optimize the Council?" Zethkar stared at her in horror. "Not optimize, improve," corrected Dr. Park. "Your bureaucracy has some obvious bottlenecks. Simple process improvements could probably cut administrative overhead by 40%, while improving response times." Zethkar felt faint. These humans had been studying galactic civilization for less than a week, and they were already suggesting improvements to systems that had worked for millennia. "Perhaps we should focus on your evaluation," he said. "Desperately, right?" "Of course," Sarah nodded. "We've prepared a full presentation about human society. Fair warning, though, it's a bit complex. We tend to do things differently than most species." The presentation began. Zethkar watched in growing amazement as the humans explained their chaotic, contradictory, impossible civilization. They had hundreds of different governments that somehow cooperated. They fought wars while simultaneously trading with their enemies. They created art that served no practical purpose and spent enormous resources exploring space just to satisfy curiosity. "This makes no sense," Zethkar interrupted. "How do you maintain stability with so much conflict?" "We don't maintain stability," Sarah laughed. "We maintain balance. Conflict drives innovation. Chaos creates opportunities. Competition makes us stronger. But conflict leads to violence. Violence leads to destruction. Sometimes," Dr. Park admitted, "but it also leads to growth. We've learned that a little controlled chaos is better than stagnant order." Zethkar checked his files on successful galactic civilizations. Every single one had achieved stability through either perfect logic, perfect harmony, or perfect submission to authority. Humans had achieved none of these things. Instead, they thrived on controlled disorder. "Your species should have destroyed itself centuries ago," he said in wonder. "We almost did," Sarah agreed cheerfully. "Several times, actually. But we got better at managing our differences. We learned to compete without destroying each other. Mostly." "How is this possible?" "Practice," Dr. Vasquez said simply. "Lots and lots of practice. And really good communication systems. And pizza. Pizza helps?" Zethkar didn't know what pizza was, but he made a note to find out. The evaluation continued for hours. The humans answered every question while asking dozens of their own. They wanted to know about council technology, politics, culture, and history. They offered suggestions for improvement on nearly everything. By evening, Zethkar's head was spinning. He retreated to his ship to compile his report. How could he possibly explain this to the council? Humans defied every category they had. They were violent but peaceful, chaotic but stable, primitive but innovative. His communication system chimed. A message from Dr. Chen. "Ambassador, we forgot to mention something important. We've been in contact with some of your merchant ships passing through our system. Nothing formal, just friendly chats. They seemed interested in our music and movies. We hope that's okay." Zethkar stared at the message in shock. Humans had made contact with other council vessels. When? How? His emergency report to the council would be very interesting indeed. Outside his ship, the humans were holding some kind of celebration. Music drifted across the landing site along with laughter and the smell of cooking food. Someone was playing what sounded like alien music mixed with human instruments. Zethkar looked out his window and saw his assistants sitting around a fire with a group of human scientists. sharing stories and samples of each other's food. Perhaps tomorrow he would try some of that coffee after all. The council chambers had never seen chaos like this. Representatives from 847 different worlds filled the vast hall with angry voices, confused questions, and frantic reports. At the center of it all sat High Chancellor Vexton, trying to make sense of the flood of messages arriving from across the galaxy. Order! Order! Vexthon's voice boomed through the chamber's amplification system. We will hear reports one at a time. Ambassador Krillex of the Korthak Empire stood first. His rocky skin was darker than usual, a sign of extreme agitation. High Chancellor, we have a situation on our farming colonies. Humans have appeared. They claim to be agricultural exchange students, and they have completely revolutionized our food production. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Humans on Korthak Prime? How did they get there? We don't know, Krillex admitted. They simply showed up 3 weeks ago with letters of introduction from something called the Earth Cultural Exchange Program. They speak perfect Korthak, and they've increased crop yields by 400% using techniques we've never seen. What kind of techniques? Demanded Councillor Thresh from the Zephyrian delegation. They call it crop rotation and companion planting, Krillex explained. Simple concepts that somehow work better than our computer-optimized growing systems. They've also introduced recreational activities they call games that our workers enjoy during rest periods. Productivity has increased along with morale. High Chancellor Vexathon felt a cold fear in his stomach. Has Ambassador Zethkar reported from Earth? His last transmission was 6 days ago, replied the communication officer. He indicated the situation was complex and required extended evaluation. Another representative stood. High Chancellor, we have similar reports from the Shivari crystal worlds. Human cultural ambassadors have introduced something called music videos that our young people cannot stop watching. Our traditional meditation practices are being disrupted, and from the water worlds of Aquatica, added another voice. Humans have shown our engineers new diving techniques that allow exploration of previously unreachable depths. They claim to have learned by studying our physiology and improving upon it. The reports kept coming. Humans on 17 different worlds, all claiming to be part of official exchange programs, all speaking local languages fluently, all making friends and improving everything they touched. Councillor Mordak of the Security Division stood slowly. His species rarely spoke unless the situation was dire. High Chancellor, our surveillance networks have detected unauthorized modifications to merchant vessels throughout the galaxy. The modifications improve efficiency and reduce energy consumption. The design patterns match human engineering principles. How is this possible? Vexthon asked. Humans are pre-spaceflight. They have no way to reach other worlds. Apparently, Mordak replied grimly. They've been hitchhiking. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Hitchhiking? On council vessels? Our investigation shows that humans have been making contact with merchant ships, research vessels, and even military patrols for months. Mordak continued. They offer small improvements to ship systems in exchange for passage to other worlds. Most captains report the trades as beneficial. High Chancellor Vex then accessed the Council's historical archives with growing dread. Every civilization that had successfully joined the galactic community had followed one of 3 paths. Perfect logic like the Velthari, perfect harmony like the Crystallians, or perfect submission like the Aquatics. These paths led to stability and predictable behavior. Humans fit none of these categories. Computer, analyze human civilization patterns, he commanded. Analysis complete, came the artificial voice. Humans display unprecedented adaptability combined with aggressive curiosity. Their civilization thrives on controlled conflict and constant change. They appear to treat the unknown as an opportunity rather than a threat. Threat assessment? Cannot calculate. Human behavior patterns do not match any known aggressive or peaceful models. They appear to be simultaneously both and neither. The security reports continued to pour in. Humans sharing cooking techniques with the insectoid hive worlds. Humans teaching new games to the mathematically obsessed equation lords. Humans somehow making the perpetually grumpy granite clans laugh with something called stand-up comedy. Most disturbing of all, they were connecting species who hadn't spoken in centuries. Ancient trade disputes were being resolved through human-mediated conversations. Age-old territorial conflicts were being forgotten as former enemies discovered shared interests in human entertainment. High Chancellor, called out Representative Quintar, we're receiving reports of something called social media spreading through our communication networks. It appears to be a human invention that allows instant communication between individuals across multiple worlds. Social media? Vexthon had never heard the term. According to our analysis, it's a system that lets people share pictures, thoughts, and experiences instantly. Citizens from different worlds are making friends and sharing their cultures. Traditional boundaries between species are dissolving. This was exactly what the Council had been created to prevent. Order depended on clear hierarchies and controlled interaction between species. If everyone started talking to everyone else, chaos would follow. Implement immediate quarantine protocols around the Sol system, Vexthon ordered. No ships in or out until we can assess this situation properly. Counselor Mordak shook his head. I'm afraid it's too late for that, High Chancellor. According to our latest reports, humans have established what they call friendship embassies on over 200 worlds. Any quarantine would require the cooperation of those worlds. Then order their cooperation. We tried. The local populations are refusing to comply. They claim the humans are too much fun to give up. High Chancellor Vexthon stared at the security report in disbelief. Multiple worlds were defying direct council orders to protect humans? This had never happened before. A new communication signal burst through the chamber systems. The transmission was coming from the Velthari homeworld. Ambassador Zethkar's people. Council members. Came a familiar voice. This is Elder Shanki of the Velthari Empire. We are calling an emergency vote of no confidence in the current council leadership. Gasps echoed through the chamber. A vote of no confidence hadn't been called in 3,000 years. The humans have shown us that our way of doing things is outdated, Elder Shanki continued. They have cured diseases that have plagued us for centuries, improved our technology, and brought joy to our children. We can no longer support a system that would deny the galaxy these gifts. Similar messages began flooding in from across the galaxy. World after world declaring their support for humanity and their lack of confidence in council leadership. High Chancellor Vexthon watched 12,000 years of galactic order crumble around him. The humans hadn't conquered anything or destroyed anything. They had simply shown up and made friends. Somehow that was more powerful than any weapon the council possessed. In less than 6 hours, the vote was complete. 3 entire leadership levels of the Galactic Council had been removed from power. The humans' worst nightmare was coming true. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the council leadership collapse, chaos spread through the galaxy like wildfire. But it wasn't the destructive chaos that everyone feared. It was something far more dangerous to the old order. Organized fun. Captain Rexino of the former council security forces stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, staring at reports that made no sense. His vessel had been tasked with monitoring the human contamination spreading through civilized space. Instead, he was watching the greatest transformation in galactic history. Captain, his communications officer called out, we're receiving another modification request from the Crystalline Freight Consortium. They want to install human-designed efficiency improvements on their entire fleet. Rexino rubbed his temples. The humans hadn't just shared their improvements with a few ships. They had somehow created an entire underground network of engineers who were upgrading vessels across the galaxy. Ships were running cleaner, faster, and more efficiently than ever before. What kind of improvements this time? He asked wearily. Something called friendship engines, the officer replied, struggling with the translation. According to the technical specifications, they use positive emotional energy to enhance fuel efficiency. That's impossible. Emotions can't affect machinery. Tell that to the 50 ships reporting 200% efficiency gains after installing human mood enhancement systems. Rexino pulled up the technical reports. Somehow the humans had figured out that crew morale directly affected ship performance. Happy crews took better care of their equipment, worked more efficiently, and caught problems earlier. The humans had turned this observation into actual engineering improvements, music systems that enhanced work productivity, recreational areas that reduced stress and improved decision-making, social gathering spaces that encouraged crew bonding and teamwork, simple concepts that somehow produced measurable results. Captain, another officer interrupted, priority message from Admiral Cortex. The hegemon war between the Rage Worlds and the Honor Clans has ended. Rexino looked up in shock. The hegemon war had been raging for 3 centuries. Ended how? Did one side achieve victory? No, sir. Apparently, a human diplomat named Jennifer Martinez convinced both sides to settle their differences through something called competitive cooking. Competitive cooking? Each side prepares their traditional foods and a panel of judges determines the winner. The losing side has to try the winner's recipes and admit they taste good. After 6 rounds of competition, both sides agreed their conflict was ridiculous and signed a peace treaty. Rexino stared at the report. 300 years of warfare ended by food preparation contests. It should have been impossible. Military leaders didn't just abandon centuries of conflict because someone asked them nicely. How many other conflicts have been resolved this way? He asked. 17 major territorial disputes, 43 trade wars, and over 200 minor border skirmishes, the officer reported. The humans keep suggesting that people just talk it out and somehow it works. The door to the bridge opened and Ambassador Zethkar entered. The Velthari looked different somehow. Younger, maybe. Definitely happier. Captain Rexino, Zethkar greeted him warmly. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I wanted to deliver this report personally. Rexino noticed that Zethkar was carrying what looked like a human tablet device. Ambassador, what happened to your official council communication equipment? Oh, I upgraded, Zethkar said cheerfully. The humans showed me how to modify my systems for better efficiency. This little device has more computing power than my old ship's main computer. Want to see the improvements they made to my vessel? Before Rexino could object, Zethkar began showing him holographic displays of ship modifications. The improvements were remarkable. Faster engines, better life support, enhanced communications, and something called an entertainment system that apparently boosted crew morale. Ambassador, Rexino said carefully, what exactly is your mission status regarding Earth? Technically, I'm supposed to be conducting a standard evaluation and compliance process, Zethkar admitted. Practically, I've been learning more in the past 6 months than in my previous 1,000 years of service. Did you know humans have over 6,000 different ways to prepare food? And their music? They have something called jazz that changes the mathematical relationships between sounds in real time. Rexino realized with growing horror that Ambassador Zethkar had been completely compromised by human influence. The professional diplomat was acting like an enthusiastic tourist. Sir, what about the compliance procedures? The neural modification requirements? Zethkar's expression grew serious. Captain, I've spent months studying human behavior. Do you know what I discovered? They're already compliant, not with our rules but with something better. They police themselves through something they call social pressure and personal responsibility. Their crime rates are lower than most council worlds and they've never attempted genocide. But they're chaotic, unpredictable. They're creative, Zethkar corrected. There's a difference. Chaos is random destruction. Creativity is organized change. Humans don't break things randomly. They improve them systematically. Rexino's communication system suddenly filled with new messages, reports from across the galaxy describing the same pattern. Humans weren't conquering worlds or destroying cultures. They were enhancing them. A message from the aquatic worlds described humans teaching new swimming techniques that allowed deeper ocean exploration. The desert clans reported that human-designed water reclamation systems had ended droughts that had lasted centuries. Even the mysterious energy beings had started communicating more actively after humans introduced them to something called electronic dance music. Captain, his communications officer announced, we're receiving a direct transmission from Earth, Priority 1. The main screen activated to show Dr. Sarah Chen sitting in what looked like a busy office. Behind her, Rexino could see humans working alongside representatives from dozens of alien species. Hello, Captain Rexino, Dr. Chen said with a warm smile. I hope you don't mind the direct contact. We've been monitoring your patrol route and thought you might like an update on what we're calling the Galactic Community Project. The what project? Rexino asked weakly. It's pretty simple, really. Instead of having one central authority making decisions for everyone, we're helping individual worlds connect directly with each other, kind of like a galaxy-wide friendship network. Behind Dr. Chen, Rexino could see aliens from species that had been enemies for millennia working together on what looked like engineering projects. A crystalline was teaching a water-bearer how to use some kind of technology, while a rock dweller and a cloud dancer shared what appeared to be food. How is this possible? Rexino asked. Turns out most conflicts happen because people don't understand each other, Dr. Chen explained. Once you start talking and sharing experiences, you realize you have more in common than you thought. We're just facilitating conversations, but the order, the stability. The Council maintained peace for 12,000 years. The Council maintained control, Dr. Chen corrected gently. Peace is something different. Peace happens when people choose to cooperate because they want to, not because they're forced to. Rexino looked around his bridge. His crew was listening intently to the human's words. Several officers were nodding in agreement. Captain, Dr. Chen continued, we'd like to invite you to visit Earth. Bring your crew, bring your ship. We promise you'll learn something interesting. The transmission ended, leaving Rexino staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers were looking at him expectantly. Set course for Earth, he heard himself saying. Maybe it was time to see what all the fuss was about. 18 months after first contact, the galaxy looked completely different. Where once the Council's rigid hierarchy had controlled every aspect of interstellar civilization, something new had emerged. The humans called it the Galactic Community, and it defied every rule of political science. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the newly constructed Community Assembly Hall, looking out at representatives from over 900 worlds. The building itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Crystalline architects had designed the structure. Aquatic engineers had handled the environmental systems. Human artists had created spaces that made everyone feel welcome. Friends, Sarah began, her voice carrying easily through the hall's perfect acoustics. 18 months ago, Ambassador Zethkar arrived at Earth expecting to find another primitive species to catalog and control. Instead, he found something none of us expected. He found partners. A warm rumble of approval echoed through the vast chamber. In the front row, Zethkar himself beamed with pride. The former Council ambassador now served as Earth's first alien diplomat, and he'd never been happier. The old Council believed that order came from control, Sarah continued. They thought diversity was dangerous and that different species needed to be managed rather than celebrated. But here's what we've learned together. Diversity isn't a problem to be solved. It's a strength to be shared. Captain Rexino, now Director of Community Security, nodded from his seat among the former Council officers. His job had changed completely. Instead of enforcing compliance, he now helped species resolve conflicts through dialogue and cooperation. It was more challenging than his old work, but infinitely more rewarding. Our first joint project, Sarah announced, will be an expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy, not to conquer or control, but to explore and make friends. The announcement sent excited murmurs through the assembly. The Andromeda expedition had been humanity's idea, but every major species had volunteered to participate. It would be the largest cooperative venture in galactic history. Elder Shanki of the Velthari Empire stood to speak. The humans have taught us that the universe is not something to be controlled, but something to be experienced. They have shown us that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. They've also shown us that problems are just opportunities in disguise, added Coordinator Thresh of the former Zephyrian delegation. When the Great Plague struck our worlds, we thought it meant disaster. Instead, human medical techniques combined with our biology knowledge led to treatments that benefit everyone. The plague breakthrough had been typical of human problem-solving. Where other species saw an insurmountable challenge, humans saw a puzzle to be solved. They'd worked with alien doctors to understand the disease, then applied their chaotic creativity to find solutions no one had imagined. The key, explained Dr. James Park, now Director of Interspecies Research, was realizing that different approaches to the same problem often produce better results than any single approach alone. Ambassador Mordak, the former Council security chief, stood slowly. His species still rarely spoke, but when they did, everyone listened. The humans have accomplished something we thought impossible, he said in his deep, gravelly voice. They have created unity without uniformity, cooperation without control, peace without domination. How did they do it? Called out someone from the back of the assembly. Mordak looked directly at Sarah Chen. They treated us like friends instead of subjects. It really was that simple. Humans had approached every alien encounter with curiosity rather than suspicion. They'd offered help without expecting obedience. They'd shared their knowledge freely and asked for nothing in return except friendship. The results speak for themselves, Mordak continued. Crime rates across the galaxy have dropped by 60%. Technological advancement has accelerated by 400%. Resource conflicts have virtually disappeared. And for the first time in recorded history, no species is at war with any other species. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. There had been challenges, misunderstandings, and occasional conflicts. But humans had a remarkable talent for turning problems into opportunities for growth. When the proud warrior clans had initially refused to abandon their combat traditions, humans had introduced them to competitive sports. Now the former warriors competed in galaxy-wide tournaments that satisfied their need for challenge without causing destruction. When the hive minds had worried about losing their collective identity, humans had shown them how individual expression could strengthen group bonds. The resulting art and music had enriched both cultures. When the energy beings had complained that physical contact was impossible, humans had developed new forms of communication that allowed emotional sharing across different states of matter. Every problem, Sarah had learned to say, is just a friendship waiting to happen. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward to announce the latest development. Our cultural exchange programs now operate on 847 worlds. We have human ambassadors learning alien customs and alien ambassadors experiencing human culture. The exchange of ideas has produced innovations none of us could have achieved alone. The success stories were endless. Architecture that combined crystalline beauty with human comfort. Music that blended alien mathematics with human emotion. Food that satisfied nutritional needs while creating social bonds. Technology that served practical purposes while enhancing quality of life. But perhaps our greatest achievement, Sarah said as she prepared to conclude her address, is proving that cooperation is more powerful than control. That friendship is stronger than fear. That diversity creates strength rather than weakness. She looked out at the assembly, seeing species that had been enemies for millennia now sitting together, planning joint projects, sharing jokes, and building a future none of them could have imagined alone. The old council's worst nightmare has come true, Sarah said with a smile. The galaxy will never be the same again, and that's exactly how we wanted it. Sethkar stood up, his forearms spread wide in the traditional Velthari gesture of celebration. To the humans who showed us that the unknown is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. To the galaxy that welcomed us with open hearts, Rexino added, raising his ceremonial cup. To friendship, called out Elder Shanky. To friendship, the entire assembly responded, their voices creating a harmony that transcended species boundaries. As the celebration began, Sarah stepped outside onto the building's observation deck. Above her, ships from hundreds of worlds moved through space in peaceful cooperation. Below her, beings who had never imagined they could be friends worked together on projects that would benefit everyone. The Andromeda expedition would launch in 6 months. Humanity's next great adventure was about to begin, and somewhere out there entirely new civilizations were waiting to become friends. Sarah smiled and looked up at the stars. The universe was vast and full of possibilities, and thanks to the power of friendship, they were going to explore every single one of them. The galaxy's worst nightmare had become its greatest dream, and it was just the beginning.